Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known. This morning, Rudy Giuliani has been found by a judge to be responsible for defaming federal election workers. That puts a cramp in their case, doesn't it? Mitch McConnell freezes again. They'll tell you the latest on the leader in the Senate. And Diddy donated $1 million to Jackson State's football program, keeping a pledge he made a year ago. We'll talk about that. And House Democrats have introduced a bill to eradicate solitary confinement in federal prisons. And finally, this morning, House Republicans are now trying to bargain Trump's charges away, threatening to force a government shutdown, investigate Alvin, Bragg, and Fani, Willis, and defund social services in a desperate bid to get all charges dropped against the former president who's been indicted now 4 times, twice impeached, and found liable, responsible for a sexual assault, all in this year. But first, let's bring on from the Cincinnati Herald, Andrea Carter joins us this morning. Andrea, how are you?
Good morning. Hi, how are you? I'm doing just fine.
Good to have you, as always,
Thank you. It's always
from the
fun to be
Queen
here.
City.
Yes, it's a very cool Queen City this morning after the summer we've had. So I'm very, very excited about the weather right now. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of the weather, the tropical storm that has been pounding the southeast Atlantic coast, bringing flash flood warnings in North Carolina as communities across Florida's west coast survey extensive damage from the most powerful hurricane to slam its Big Bend region in more than a century. Um, it's now coming up the east, well, up north, I should say, with weather alerts all the way from North Carolina to New Jersey. So lots and lots of weather. Climate change, Andrea.
I, yes, it is climate change. We're seeing all kinds of things here. I mean, Cincinnati, our winters, usually we have very, very cold winters, and we've had warm winters for I think the last 5, 6 years. We've had very warm winters, and now this year, at least according to the Farmer's Almanac, it probably get closer to a more normal esque warmer winter, supposedly. But we'll see. They said that last year, and we had maybe 1 week of cold, and then it was back to warm, meaning it was like between the 25 and 30s. So
Right.
it's gonna be interesting to see what happens this year. So knock on wood.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think many, particularly in the on the eastern seaboard, has had a lot of cold winters in recent years.
No, I think, well, I know New York, New Jersey, everyone up in the upper, well, I should say in the Northeast where you are, you still get the cold because you're on the ocean.
But
So,
it still has been so mild. We've had so many mild winters. Um, it's very rare to see snow now,
mm,
and it just, I mean, not that I want it to be really cold. I mean, I would
well,
prefer what they say San Diego weather, but
yeah, well,
um,
I mean, I love San Diego, San Francisco weather. But I think what's really been interesting is that the weather the East Coast used to get, we now see on the West, and the weather that you see on the West, you're getting on the East. It's like the whole region is reversed,
right,
and
right,
it's very interesting how people claim that there's not climate change. Well, Republicans, and I'm kind of like, what world do you live in? Why are you denying this? It doesn't help you. um and I think the Republicans are having a hard time getting in with the electric because the young people aren't stupid. They know what's going on, even whatever belief or viewpoint they have. They recognize there's climate change. There's a difference in politics. There's so much smarter than a lot of people were their age 50 years ago or 40 years ago. So I
mm,
mean, it's not saying that we weren't smart at that age either, but I'm just saying they're more in tuned. They're not buying the hype
right.
because and I think the Republicans are lost. Well, I'll take that back. People who believe like the GOP are lost because they don't know where they fit in to this new reality. And they're fighting it left and right. And they don't like to admit that they're wrong. And because they don't like to admit that they're wrong, they have to make everyone believe that it's true. And unfortunately, truth is stranger than fiction. So,
Well, Power 96 says that they don't have winters in the deep south. He says it's so hot there. They have basically 60 degrees is par for the course there. Winter has really eluded. Again, I'm not really complaining, but winter has eluded us for years now. So we, this climate change and all of that stuff is as real as it gets. I'll tell you what else is as real as it gets. A federal judge ruled yesterday that Rudy Giuliani defamed former Georgia election workers Ruby Freeman and her daughter Wandrea Shea Moss and is liable for damages after he failed to comply with discovery obligations in their lawsuit over his baseless claims that they committed fraud during the 2020 election. A civil trial will be held to determine the amount of damages. They said the bottom line is that Giuliani has refused to comply with his discovery obligations and thwarted plaintiffs Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Art Shea Moss's procedural rights to obtain any meaningful discovery in this case. That was according to U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell, who wrote a lengthy opinion on this. And this really goes to that Giuliani's part as a co-conspirator in the big trial in Georgia, the election interference case in Georgia, these individuals, Freeman and her daughter, are central to DA Fani Willis's case.
I'm amazed. I'm just amazed that again, reality. What reality are they're believing? They're trying to believe that 2020 didn't happen, that everything that they didn't happen. And I'm sorry,
they're trying to believe that what they did was right is what they're now. That's a spin. Trump. Well, now he's, his defense has obviously become, I have a right to contest the election results, and that's now his defense.
Well, I mean, it's a poor defense. I mean, it's so poor, it's pitiful. I mean, he went to court 68 times. 68 times judge ruled it didn't happen. I mean, how many more times are you going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing? And I think if his poll numbers are starting to show that people are pushing back. They're like, we're tired of this song and dance. Find a new tune. You don't know what you're doing. And I think very slowly his core is going to stick with him. But very slowly, if you look at the independents that did support him, they're not now. And I think GOP has to be careful because the independents that support them aren't. Well, and it's interesting to watch that quiet majority. They're not saying anything, but you're wondering what they're going to do.
Yeah, and so that's what I was going to say. The idea for many is that they're not saying anything. They didn't say anything in 2016.
No,
they didn't say anything in 2020. And they went in that poll, like when they went to the booth, they pulled the lever for Trump.
Yeah, but I think that they're also saying that they're now want to pull the lever for someone who's going to work on their behalf and make their lives better, even despite other issues going on. I think the reality is inflation, the economy, jobs, people fighting back against remote work. I mean, against hybrid or going in the office. They want to stay remote working or do a hybrid-esque per se. Folks, the new reality coming out of the pandemic has changed a lot of perspectives. Because, I mean, when you're scared to death like that, and then you come back to full reality again, your perspectives have changed. Your viewpoints have changed. How you deal with reality has changed. And the GOP has not changed.
Rational people.
Rational. Thank you. That's the word. I mean, rational people, they have a different level of acceptance now. Going through that was scary. People died from that. And I think everyone either is forgetting it or remembering it, but their viewpoint has changed. Their acceptance level of certain things has changed. but the GOP didn't change. They didn't evolve. They didn't grow. Now, I shouldn't lump all of GOP with that. I would say those who left, became independent or moderate, they understand what's going on. Others have not. And it's unfortunate some of those fools are from Ohio. So, but I can't help that.
Really, really interesting. Again, we will see 2024 is coming right up. And before you know it, the election will be here. And Power 96 was on early, and he gave us this little tidbit this morning. He says that, good morning. And he says, Alexa, can you play Freeze Frame for Mitch McConnell?
Oh, that was, my phone blew up yesterday with notifications.
Well, here it is.
Okay.
Senator, you're up for election in 3 short years. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you.
That's okay. What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator Benny.
Okay.
He did need a minute. He needed a minute.
Well,
this is the second time.
Yes, it's the second time that obviously after his fall and he suffered from a concussion, something has occurred that's causing him to go through this. And obviously, I was watching the aides. They're adapted. This is not the first time that they've had to deal with him. And in fact, very quickly she moved in. He moved in, got him out. And the other part of that video is watching him walk out of the room. He is, how some men get that old man hunch walking out. He's starting to get that old man hunch. And he was walking very, very, very slow. And I was like, he is aged. Something has occurred.
What's the old man hunch? Am I going to get that? What's that?
The what? The old man hunch? It's certain men of a certain age start to hunch over when they get older, like in their late 80s, early 90s. Okay. My father's starting to get it. And he's 89. So, I mean, it was horrifying to me when I first saw it when I was out at home. I was at his house at Christmas time, and I was like, oh my God. But I've seen it enough times that it happens. But something has occurred where he is aged, and his staff is adept. Obviously, this is not the first time. Yeah. And there's something going on. The fact that she tuned in right away, he tuned in right away, and they got him out of there. And it's been seen all over the place. Once, okay, twice, there's an issue. There is a medical issue that's going on with him.
And age, like you said. I mean,
age too. And that is something. But the fact that he's gotten caught now, again, freezing up, even though he did come back later on and answer a few questions, he did not acknowledge what happened. But this is the first time it happened on his home turf in Kentucky. And I think if you notice that in DC, he's not been seen as often, right, as he normally is. I think it's happening more frequently.
It might
try to cover it up.
Yeah, I was thinking of that as well. That it could very well be happening more frequently. And I have to acknowledge too, Andrea, what Mike V wrote, because look, what's good for the goose, right? It says it's interesting. They want President Biden to not run because of his age, but have absolutely no problem with, as he calls him, Freeze Connell being in office.
I mean, well, number one, you have to think about it from a political perspective. Mitch McConnell has a lot of power right now. He's been in the Senate a long time. He's ruled a long time in the Senate. And to lose him, they lose that leverage. They lose the fact that he knows, the fact that I think it was interesting that Biden said, I'll be calling and checking on him because we're good friends. which I mean, I think that's great.
They
That's
served for
fantastic.
decades together.
Right. They have served together for a long time. And obviously they're friends behind the scenes. But at the same time, there is a power vacuum getting ready to happen. And the GOP can't afford to lose that in the Senate. But at the same time, there's a medical issue with him. And they need to decide whether or not, obviously 2026, he's not going to run. There's going to be enough people
You
running
think it's
against
obvious?
him.
Because these guys, I mean, look at Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she's like 400 years old, and she's hanging on.
I know she's hanging on for dear life, but I mean, eventually someone's going to have to say enough.
But they don't, and that's the point. They don't. They get, and this is all about, and I think that's part of why we see so much hate. We see so much of political hate and stuff like that. It's because it's all about power. It's not. There is almost no politician out there that wants to do right for their constituent first and then them second. It's about themselves for the most part. You got a few, but
Yeah.
it's all about the power.
Well, I think this is where the oversight committee comes in, where they need to demand and investigate what is going on. Obviously, there's a medical issue. Obviously, maybe at a certain point, if there's a certain age, then they need medically determined. If they start showing up and can't do their job, then there's someone has to rule on this. Obviously, there's something wrong with Mitch McConnell.
Yeah,
It's
and
obvious.
unfortunately, there's nothing really, Andrea, as you mentioned, like the oversight. There's really, even if they say, he's not fit, there's nothing they can do.
No.
He's an elected official, federally elected official. As we've seen in other jurisdictions, though, state elected officials might be a little tenuous. Depends on what state they're in. But federally elected officials, it's hard. I mean, look at what's his name, George, whatever, the nutcase is still in office.
I know,
and we don't even talk about him anymore. Santos, he's been in office for almost a year, and he should be in jail.
Yeah, he should. And I mean that really truly, it's about that's the reason why the ethics committee is there. They're oversight. They should be handling this. And I mean, if they can limit Marjorie Taylor Greene for a hot second, they can limit other things. It just is a matter of people stepping up to the take and actually saying, okay, there's a problem. What's going on behind the scenes? Even the GOP in the Senate needs to be questioning their leader. What's going on?
But as you said, they're not going to question him. You know why? Because as you said, it's the power vacuum. They will do whatever it takes, even if it's trotting him out there. He can go full on stroke. If they've deemed it that they can use that to their advantage, they will use that.
Well, I mean, and then on top of that, I mean, then it heads up to Kentucky. This is what you want for your leader. This is what you want representing you. I mean, somewhere, someone has to start saying enough is enough. Someone has to take charge of the situation and say, for the good of our constituents, you got to stop. Whether it's Dianne Feinstein or whether it's Mitch McConnell, at some point, when there's glaring medical issues going on affecting their ability to do their job. Now, this is the beginning for Mitch McConnell. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I mean, he's given us the speeches here and there. But other than that, you don't see him. He's not doing the press conferences. He's not mouthing off like he normally is. Dianne Feinstein, usually she's giving fiery statements.
Well, she's not weekends at Bernie. They wheel her in and wheel her out. The vote, they press the vote button for her. It's tragic and a travesty. That situation. Power 96 says his staff, Mr. Staff looks like they rehearse this once a week. Mike V says this, and this is the other point. This is about their agenda and their power. Mike V says it's interestingly enough, Mitch McConnell was against the Affordable Care Act, which many folks his age in Kentucky needed desperately, and they voted against.
But Mitch McConnell has proven over and over again that he votes for certain things to benefit certain people, but not his constituency. You would have thought,
right?
And during his last election, it was thought that people would wake up and vote against him, though he still won overwhelmingly. the number was not as high as it normally was. So some thoughts got through, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens the next time around. Who's going to
Yeah, I mean, it
vote
is
for
going to be
what?
interesting. I just don't see, at least right now, I just don't see some sort of, uh,
Well,
groundswell of support to oust him.
no, well, I mean, basically, this is now what's happening now is a challenge for the young people.
Right.
Um, and I think the young people, um, if you are fed up, you need to get out and vote. You need to start speaking up. Now, they're speaking up this way and that way. I'm like, you got to speak up. You got to start showing what you want, what you need, because, I think the 2024 election, maybe the next few elections, the baby boomers still have strength, but at the same time, that strength is slowly eroding, and then everyone else has to step up to the plate and decide, what do you want, where are you going? And then on top of that, because of the changes in the education system, who's not being taught what, who's not understanding how the government runs, who's not understanding how things operate. That's another issue. And then you have people scared of whatever. They're trying to change the educational system so people are dumber than they even are before.
Well,
So
yeah, we had that discussion.
I know it's an ongoing discussion, but I'm just saying it comes to everything political is also educational. It for every action there's a reaction, and I mean eventually someone has to step up and say enough. But I'm not hearing enough yet. There's a small groundswell, but it's not happening yet. Not
Yeah.
enough.
Well, I tell you what is happening. Yesterday, Sean Diddy Combs donated $1 million to Jackson State's University's football team. You remember Dion was there.
Yes.
He's continuing his pattern of support for HBCUs. Diddy presented the check to JSU between the first and second quarters of the school's victory over South Carolina State on Saturday. Formally presented the actual check yesterday, is what we're told. He says, if it wasn't for HBCUs, I wouldn't be here. He's a former student, of course, of Howard University. And he says that HBCUs, as we know, are under-resourced and that he was here to do something about it. He first pledged to give while receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2022 BET Awards. He had previously given $1 million to Howard in 2016 to establish a scholarship fund, and had said that he would donate a further $1 million to the school in the same acceptance speech. He says supporting historically Black colleges and universities is crucial to preserving their legacy and ensuring they continue to change lives. This donation to Jackson State is not just a financial contribution, it's an investment in the future and our culture.
Oh, I believe that. As a graduate of Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio, I'm very much an HBCU fan. I had great teachers. When I went to Central State, they continue to have great teachers who teach there. They pump out good graduates who are ready, who believe in society, what they can do, what they can accomplish. And I think that everyone needs to support the HBCUs, especially with the attack on our educational system the way it is. They have always been the historians of our history. They've always told the truth. They've always stood there as the true believers of what is good in the country, how we can fight against what is bad in the country. And they prepare our young people very, very, very well. And also, it's a great way to learn what real competition is away from the crap of the real world. It gives you time to find out who you are, what you are, and then compete against each other in a different way than having bias blood into it. It gives you a chance to fight on an even level. Then when you get out there, you know what real competition is. And I think that's what HBUs do very, very well, besides preparing you for whatever field you want to go into. And I believe that more and more Black millionaires need to support the HBCUs, whether it's giving to one big scholarship or give to one organization or another that supports HBCUs, or give to the HBCU of your choice. I mean, it is, every HBCU has a story to tell. They have famous people who have attended there. And I encourage everyone to support it and go to it. And also, they're technically cheaper than most standard universities and colleges. So it's a good investment for your buck.
Yeah,
So.
it is good to see folks who, especially those who went to an HBCU like Diddy, giving back like that. And you're right, I don't disagree. When you have attained and achieved what people like Diddy has achieved, it's such a good look. I mean, they can do whatever they want with their money. We know that these things are tax write-offs, but many don't do it. So congratulations and kudos to Puffy, Diddy, P Diddy.
Yeah, you know what? I just, whatever he wants to be called himself, but I think I admire anyone who sticks up and not only walks the walk but talks the talk. And
Right.
Diddy's proving that he has learned a lot, and he understands giving back is important to moving forward. I mean, it's wonderful. I'm glad to see this in him and do
Yeah, and I
this.
like too, Andrea. So Power 96, he was really into SWAC sports. I think he covers it as well. He says he gives out 2 free tickets to the game of the week in the SWAC every Friday. And I think even something like that, it's not $1 million, but to some, those tickets are gold, right?
Yes.
They mean everything. It's like the poor widow who dropped in the 2 small coins, right?
Yes.
Gave all that she gave, and that is Power 96 deserves a lot of credit for that, because again, he's able to do it, but doesn't mean he has to do it.
No.
Did he did it? Doesn't mean he has to do it. So,
I mean,
that
I mean, it's something to give back. I know, like my father, he was an arts professor at Central State, and he eventually gave his when he moved from Dayton permanently to Florida, he gave some of his old papers, slides, and everything else that he used to teach at Central State to the art department at Central State. And that was his way of giving back, to make sure that the information he had and the knowledge he had was able to be obtained and used by the students for their own education. And I think we all need to do our part. Everyone can't give $1 million. Everyone can't give free tickets, but you can do something to make sure the HBCUs continue to survive and thrive and educate our young people going forward. I try to go up to Central State as much as often, or at least buy something to represent Central State, to promote it in my own way. And, I'm a very proud alumnus, and I think that any member of an HBCU alumni family needs to go back and support their school, because it's more crucial now than ever to make sure they survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a bill that would broadly ban the use of solitary confinement in federal prisons, jails, and detention centers was introduced by a coalition of House Democrats, a measure that seeks to codify into law the limitations on when and how long someone can be left isolated in a cell. Under the In Solitary Confinement Act, inmates and detainees would not be segregated alone for more than a maximum of 4 hours in order to de-escalate an emergency situation. And even then, staff would be required to meet with them at least once an hour. We know incarcerated people would also, under this, be ensured access to at least 14 hours of daily time out of their cells, including access to 7 hours of programming meant to address topics such as mental health, substance abuse, and violence prevention. So Cori Bush is leading this charge, Representative Cori Bush, to change the law there on solitary confinement. About 122,000 people, Andrea, in federal and state adult prisons and federal and local jails are placed in restrictive housing, informally known as solitary confinement, for 22 hours or more on a given day. So this is pretty huge.
It is very huge. I mean, it's people. It's been documented that the more people are confined, the more the wear and tear on their mental health. I mean, think of the individuals who are in those maximum prisons, of where they're housed individually, in those cells for 22 hours. They get out for an hour to do whatever, then they're back in by themselves. They lose socialization. They lose the ability to understand what is right, what is wrong. Also, what is reality? I think the young man who was being held in that New York State, no, not the New York State prison, but the Rikers. And he got out and he killed himself eventually because the stress of being in there, he didn't do anything wrong,
Right.
but he's still held because he couldn't afford bail. But the wear and tear on his mental health was unbelievable. The fact that he had to kill himself, which I think is horrible. But still, we know enough about psychology to know that people need to socialize. People need that connection to other people, even though social media has done damage to that. Overall, we still need to get out and see people. We still need to, talk, see, socialize, get together, hang out. More people. I know there's a lot of things where after the pandemic, more people are holding events now more than ever. I know a number of organizations are doing their galas, their fundraisers. More and more people are getting out there because we need that connection. And I admire Cori Bush for what she's doing. I think it's commendable. Even though they're paying a debt, prisoners are paying a debt to society, they should not have to pay with their mental health for paying that debt to society. And I think it's come a long way and recognize that it's what's good for one is good for the better of all. And we can recognize that, yes, everything needs to evolve and grow and change. Even prison has to grow, evolve, and change how prisons operate, because the mental stress, not only on the prisoner, but also on the guard, maintaining them, it's a mental stress and changes people. And so I think, yes, if they have to be confined like that for punishment for whatever thing that they've done, they also need break that connection again. They shouldn't just be in there. And I'm a whole supporter of it.
The individual's name that you're trying to think of, Mike V says it's Khalif Border.
Yes. I couldn't remember his name, but I remember the circumstance. And
absolutely.
There's enough prison stories out there that we hear about confinement, solitary confinement. We've seen enough prison movies on solitary confinement. We don't have to imagine it. We know it. We can look to it in the movies and see the ramifications of what happens to people in that. And I think we, as we grow as a people, we need to recognize that mental health and the trauma that causes different effects of mental health, we need to address it. We need to step up as a people and say, okay, we all need to go through therapy at one point. We all need to admit that there is an issue and keep moving forward and be healthy about it.
Dr. Thomas Braxton Jones Jr. is watching on LinkedIn. He says we need to initiate our village that we have lost. Community unity is key. The support of each other and the African American race. We can not only address our issues, but change what has been hurting the African American race. Unification of a national coalition to make a difference today. That is,
I believe it. Because I do some violence prevention work and here in the city of Cincinnati, and I see the young people who are coming back from being in jail or prison, and the first thing they do is they go back to the people they know. They congregate and they gather, and they need that connection. And I think also the neighborhood suffers from PTSD. The prisoners suffer from PTSD. And we need to address that. Maybe returning citizens, as they're called, need to go through some sort of therapy to make sure mentally they're ready to be part of society and or deal with the effects and the ramifications of what happened to them while they were paying their debt to society, that they are okay as they try to find a job, try to get back with their families, try to do all of this. I'm a believer in that because I've seen the effects of it. And you know what? I could commend Representative Cori Bush for doing this, because this is the beginning of acceptance of mental health in the Black community, I know there are a number of people who don't believe in it, don't want to talk about it, don't want to deal with counseling. But you know what? We got to. For our own future, we have to address it.
So, 4 criminal indictments of Donald Trump have ignited his followers and spurred his House Republican allies to try to use the upcoming government funding deadline of September 30th as leverage to undermine the prosecutions. The bad news for them: a government shutdown wouldn't halt the criminal proceedings against the former president. Trump's indictments in New York and Georgia would not be affected, while his federal indictments for allegedly mishandling classified documents and for his role in the January 6th insurrection are criminal matters that have been exempted from shutdowns in the past. The Justice Department said in a memo that in a shutdown, quote, criminal litigation will continue without interruption as an activity essential to the safety of human life and the protection of property. The Justice Department's plans assume that the judicial branch remains fully operational, which it has said in the past can carry on for weeks in the event of a funding lapse. But Republicans are full steam ahead, trying to use whatever leverage they can come up with, Andrea, to stop the prosecutions of the 4th time indicted, twice impeached, and a man who a jury earlier this year in New York found responsible for sexual assaulting a woman. All of this to protect that individual with those credentials.
Yeah. Why? You know what? When I see Jim Jordan's picture, he makes me ashamed to be an Ohioan. I swear to God. Because Ohio is a wonderful state. It's a wonderful part of the country. But him and what he's been doing, it hurts my heart. But anyway.
Yeah, Mike V mentions too that the Republicans call that woke legislation. They vote against it, and but the problem is they're looking to insert some provisions in government funding legislation that would hinder the prosecutors. They are looking, searching through every little nook and cranny to try and find this gotcha moment in which they think these are legislators. These are perhaps they're adults. I don't know, but it's like what you cannot. They should know by now. You cannot stop this prosecution.
No, you can't. You can't stop it. It once it's done, it's done. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they release that report about the grand jury report on the indictments in September from Georgia. I mean, it's going to be interesting to read the background of what they discovered and found that led to the indictments. I mean, everyone who's fighting the truth, and the more you show people the truth, the more they will want to admit that they've been wrong. And they fight against being told that they're wrong, especially those in power. The fact that Jim Jordan continues to open his mouth, God help us.
I agree with Power 96. I think we are definitely going to have a government shutdown on September 30th. There's no question. Trump has told, he has said that he will endorse any Republican who votes for the shutdown, and he will not endorse any Republican who does not vote for the shutdown. So he's he's laid down the gauntlet. He has. This is it.
But at the same time, do you want a would-be criminal, alleged criminal, and make sure I use the word alleged, to support you? Because that support down the road, everyone who is up to testify in those cases against 45 are all Republican. They're not Democrats. They're not independents. They're Republican. They were picked by him. They're part of his inner circle. They're all testifying. And you know what? The reality of being indicted, eventually they're going to turn because they can't afford. He's not paying for everybody. He barely can pay for himself on his own legal bills. They're going to make a deal because the reality of going to jail, they don't want to do it. And eventually,
he certainly got to be concerned that his co-conspirators are going to make a deal. Mark Meadows did something extremely unusual last week when he testified during the hearing. I mean, that was unheard of. And really, when you look at the reaction from legal experts, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy, it's one or the other. What folks have been speculating. Either he is definitely going to flip, or he just threw away the whole show. And I
I think
see
he's desperate. He's desperate.
when I see where Harrison Floyd was finally released. Oh my
Oh,
gosh, he stayed
well,
in there a couple of weeks, didn't he?
yes, he did. I mean, but also he faces other charges besides the indictment
Yeah.
from Georgia. He faces other charges.
Well, assaulting
So
federal officers. He was one of
yeah,
the
he's
charges.
in deep. But I think what people are slowly waking up to the reality of associating with Trump, whether or not he goes to jail. I think that the reality of the situation is starting to wake people up. Not enough right now.
Yeah,
His core, his
those
true.
co-conspirators, other than Mark
They,
Meadows, because I'm thinking like Harrison Floyd, Blacks for Trump or whatever. If that wasn't a wake-up call, everyone left Atlanta without him. Everyone left Atlanta. No one was stuck in the Fulton County jail except him. No one was stuck without a lawyer except him. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm calling Fani Willis. I'm saying, let's, that old game show. Let's make a deal.
Yeah. But I think,
oh my gosh.
But I think everyone believed that Trump said, "Don't worry, I'll be there for you." He lies.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't. He's not. He's not there for anybody. Giuliani was his big supporter. Giuliani was his lawyer. Giuliani, the man that everybody knew for 9/11, now he's to this, which is sad because the legacy he has destroyed to the point of,
he was
oh my
doing a
God.
good job of that himself before he linked up with Trump. But
I know, but I'm just saying that it's sad to see him go from this to this.
It's not sad, Andrea.
I mean,
as Cool in the Gang says, it's a celebration.
Well, true. But I mean,
that guy,
in terms of as someone who is a lover of history, a lover of understanding what people have accomplished, and then how they erode it. I mean, it's kind of sad to see someone who is so high on a pedestal and he tumbles so far. Everyone
You're
is
just
human.
not American, are you? Because America loves to see people get knocked off their pedestal.
I know. It's just, I mean, it's kind of sad because I think everyone has a legacy, whether it's helping your local church or your local neighborhood. Everyone leaves a legacy behind, whether it touches one person or two people or 20 people. And I think I'm a believer in those who have done good or bad. It's kind of shame to see where they end up. Again, because it's their own action, they end up this way. And everyone loves a soap opera, and a lot of this stuff is like a soap opera. Yep. I can't wait for the made-for-TV movie. But I mean, it's kind of like you have to sort of not understand, but in disbelief and continue to talk with people about this is how you don't want to end up. This is how power corrupts. And I think this is a great teaching tool. While what's happening right now is you don't want to go to jail. Yes, you want to believe in who you're supporting, but at the same time, make sure that it's ethically, it's responsible, and it doesn't blow back on you. Or if it blows back on you, you're able to handle it in such a way that you come out okay, despite whatever negativity it is. Unfortunately, these people dug in so deep and believing in Donald Trump. I can't believe I said his name. Because I'm trying to maintain, not saying that name. That the blowback is so deep. They believe that what they were doing is right. They can't believe they're facing jail. Rudy Giuliani got upset because he was perp walked. Which, when he was the New York prosecutor, he was famous for perp walking people. He can't believe that he went through his own perp walk. And I'm like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Right. And, for every action, there is a reaction. And I think the people who have joined in with Trump, and I mean, even the lawyers now who are representing Trump, which everyone needs representation. I'm not bad mouthing them, but at the same time, you know who you're dealing with.
Right.
And eventually, my thought is that when is he going to cross that line for people to say you need to stop? When is that line going to be crossed?
If we're waiting for that,
well,
this is the man who said that he can grab women by their private parts. This is a man who said, and then of course he was ironic about that. As we mentioned earlier, he was a civil jury convicted him of sexual assault this year. But he's a guy who said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for him. Well, he's pretty much he didn't shoot anybody that we know of on Fifth Avenue, but he's done things that are probably far worse than that, and he has been able to this point go scot-free. So
and I mean, it's kind of like I would love to be on a discussion with psychologists and psychiatrists on 45. I mean, especially with all the issues that people have said in the past, what he may have, and just dissect his psyche on his actions. Just to hear that conversation would be very, very interesting. But I think also
you're better than me.
Again, I'm quirky. But I think at the same time, as Black people, we need to take a step back, look at what's happening, and say, okay, how can we use this as a teaching moment for our young people to know that eventually you may be one of our leaders? This is what you need not do.
Well, I think that that goes without saying. I mean, you let Obama or Kamala or Hakeem Jeffries try and do just a smidgen of what Trump has done. That's the lesson.
Yes, I mean, but I'm just saying that it's. I think
maybe you want to. It's just another lesson on this is the realities that we live in. There is privilege for some.
Yes, I mean it's kind of like I was. Someone posted on Facebook the other day. Grey's Anatomy, love that show. When Amanda Bailey was telling her son Tuck, explaining to him what you need to do when you're confronted by police. 13-year-old learning the lessons of how to handle a situation where a police officer may stop you so that you survive and come home. And and they posted it on Facebook, that conversation. And to me, I think even now more than ever, that is an important conversation to have, not just with your 13-year-old or your 6-year-old or your 10-year-old, but also with your adult child or daughter or nieces and nephews. Again, we need you to come home. We need you, blah, 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 blah. And watch to make sure you don't do this, 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 and this, because there's crazy out there. There's crazy everywhere, and it's going to affect us one way or the other. And unfortunately, as we see more and more of 45 get embroiled with the justice system, the crazier it's going to become, the crazier the reaction is going to be, the crazier that we're going to have to protect ourselves against stupid.
Well, I'll give Pat Bryant on Facebook the last word. He says Rudy has been a white supremacist all his life. He is going down because Black voters empowered Fani Willis to send his butt to jail. White supremacy is on his deathbed if we vote. Folks, we really appreciate Andrea jumping in from the Cincinnati Herald. Say hi to everybody in the Queen City, and thank you all for watching. Let it be known. We'll see you again tomorrow.